Hey, what's going on, my friends, and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Victor, and this is going to be an intuitive energy update for the whole week of May 23rd, 2022. In this video, I'm going to share with you 3 very important things you should know about this week. Number 1, I wrote down digging deeper to find yourself. Sometimes as we go through the spiritual awakening, as our shadow, as our unconsciousness bubbles up to the surface to be released, learned from, integrated, etc., it can sometimes get where it seems like anyway, it gets stuck. And you, for a time, become an embodiment on all levels, especially the way you view yourself, an embodiment of not you, not your truth, not your potential, but your shadow. And you see the world, you see yourself through this foggy lens of your shadow. And because it kind of comes out of left field and it can sort of linger in your field, your energy field for a little while, maybe a span of days, you can sometimes forget who you are. You can forget, it's almost like you can't find your confidence. You can't find that part of you that knows you're good, that knows your power, that knows your place in the world. And you find yourself in this sort of wandering, weary state, like you feel vulnerable in life. And it's also kind of depressing and unpleasant. And you're probably thinking, whoa, bro, this is not a very good reading already, Victor. And yet the opposite is actually true. Those times, whether it's just an aspect of the nature of awakening or some sort of divinely, orchestrated learning lesson, which I think it is, regardless of what it is, what we can do is up to us. Many people, in fact, my former self, when I would get into these funks, these void-like states where I just don't feel like myself, I would wait it out. I'd go online, I'd look up the energies. I'd say, what's going on with the energies? What's going on with the full moon, whatever. And say, oh, okay, well, maybe once Mercury retrograde passes, then I'll feel better. Then the energies will lift. And eventually they will. Eventually you'll snap out of it, of course. But what I've learned is that you don't have to wait that long. And therein, this whole circumstance, which on all levels looks unpleasant and just like unfortunate, there's an opportunity to dig deeper. As I said at the very beginning, you probably forgot, it's an opportunity to dig deeper, to really focus inward, almost with more intensity, where it's like, I know, even though I don't feel it, I know my power is in there somewhere. You might have to dig a little deeper. You might have to sift through some of your patterns, some of your defense mechanisms, maybe. You might have to go deeper and deeper and deeper. And then it's like, there I am. Man, it feels good to be back. This is something I went through in a very real way this whole last week because I was sick. My whole family has been sick. One after the other. We're dropping like flies. Well, I had my turn. And not only was I feeling really crummy, as I mentioned, if you watched my last update, I was actually sick. I had a fever and really couldn't get out of bed for a couple of days. But after that point, once the fever had kind of worn off, I found myself feeling just really down, really depressed, really again, kind of taken over by my shadow. And I felt very fragile. I felt very just unsafe in my world on a practical level, unsafe within my relationships. And it had lasted so long that it's almost like I forgot if this was just a temporary phase. And I too had to really dig deep. And I found this, I was on vacation actually, sort of at the tail end of it, really not feeling like myself, in this really miserable funk. All my friends were all hanging out. I said, just go on, just go on without me. I was in this little pity party sort of mentality. And I found myself just suffering. And I couldn't snap out of it. I knew better. I said, bro, you got to get up and do some yoga. Do some breath work or something. Snap out of this funk. You're just driving yourself bananas. I knew I was, but I just couldn't do it. And there just finally came this point where I just made the choice. And it felt like it was a very uphill battle, but I just made a simple choice. And the choice was, I refuse to let circumstance, including my mood, my depressive mood, I refuse to let anything weigh me down another second. So I literally perked up out. I was laying back in bed in this hotel room like a little baby, like, oh, pardon me. I said, no. I sat up and I looked around. I took a breath. I marched over and took a sort of lukewarm shower. I was going for a cold shower. It was not very cold in Cabo, St. Lucas. This lukewarm shower. And I said, screw it. And I went out into the day. And I just made this choice to snap out of it. But it was hard. I was really met with a lot of my resistance. But once I did that, it was like I snapped back online. It was like, oh, whoa, this is who I am. Thank God I'm not that other guy. That's just a temporary experience of healing a former part of my shadow. That's all that was. And now I'm back. Now I'm no longer influenced by that. But it wasn't this easy passage of time. It was a choice I made in the moment. And in the moment, it felt like the choice was impossible, but I made it anyways. And you know what? I felt so much more empowered, so much more grounded in like the remembrance of who I truly am. And I felt like $1,000,000 from that point forward. So if you find yourself in this little funk, that maybe it's a big funk, remember, and it might not be easy, but remember, you and only you can pull yourself out of it. But when you do, that experience, that recognition of lifting yourself out of the funk, regardless of what's going on, is such a valuable experience that makes you feel like you can just take on the world because you can, because that's how powerful you actually are, even if you forgot for a couple of minutes there. Number 2, it's a week to find your voice. Not so much finding your voice. Your voice is always there. It's more about voicing your voice, expressing your voice, even when it might go against what people normally would expect of you, even when it might go against the grain of normal, ordinary thinking. What you'll find is that there will be a great deal of suffering when you bite your tongue and you deny yourself the freedom of authentic expression. Now, it sounds like a bad thing to deny oneself the freedom of authentic expression, and yet most of us do that if we're honest. We do that to save face. We do that to avoid rustling any feathers. But life, for some time, has been showing us that, yeah, that's one option, but usually it ends up backfiring in the end anyway, and it's also not authentic. And repressing your true self is just going to become more and more unnatural because it isn't natural. And usually what I found is that when I express myself in the moment of feeling a certain way, it never goes badly. It never comes off in this, confrontational way. It never upsets people the way I imagine. Now, what does happen, and it used to happen more so especially, is I would bite my tongue. I would, deny my self-expression. And then inevitably something would happen and it would just come out. And then it would be a lot more, with more like potency behind it. And that would sometimes upset people. This is something that me and my friends and my wife were working through recently on vacation. We're all close friends, and yet we're all wired very differently. And we found ourselves trying to have this sort of like unified vacation experience, and it wasn't working for everybody at all times. I'll give an example. My friend Heather, she is wired very, very differently than me, my best friend Aaron Dowdy, and my wife. All three of us, me, Aaron, and Patty, we're all very like type A. We run our life by a schedule. I have my to-do list right here in front of me that I live from. And we're kind of anal in that way. We get up early, we work out early, we get shit done. That's kind of our mentality. And the world needs that. There's a lot of people who are too passive and don't really get anything done. Now, all three of us, we admit we can be a little bit neurotic about it. We can be a little bit controlling. We can sometimes miss the moment because we're so like intent on being productive. And Heather is the opposite. She gets up late. She sort of eases into the day. She's in her own flow. And you know what, though? She's very happy most of the time I see her. She's very present. She really lives in the moment in a way that I look up to in a big way. But we found ourselves sort of in conflict temporarily because, we were all getting up early, and then she felt kind of bad. And she was, for a time, trying to adjust herself to our ways, getting up early, getting to the gym. And she was able to. But after about a couple of days, she had had enough. She said, no, guys, I ain't doing it. We were going to go jet skiing. And she's like, I'm not going jet skiing. I don't want to. It's way too early for me. I want to enjoy myself. I want to dance. She dances randomly. Just dance. That's kind of the person she is, and it's so cool. She's like, I want to just dance if I want to dance, The point is, she finally spoke up. You know what happened? He said, okay, cool. We get it. No problem. And that's just an example. There were other, all of us, all four of us at different times had to kind of do something very similar, like speak up and say, hey, you know what? This isn't working for me. Here's how I like to do things. And we had to kind of get used to everyone's style, but we are all very reasonable about it. But in the past, especially me, I used to just kind of go with the flow. And same with Heather. She was talking about that. In the past, she would have sort of begrudgingly just went along for the ride, even though it was against her natural rhythms. But she would have done it because she didn't want to make people upset. She didn't want people to think that, she's mad at them or doesn't like them. But the reality was that no, her needs matter too. My needs, your needs matter as well. Your preferences matter. Your voice matters. It always has. And now it's time not just to find it. You've already found it. All of us know what we want. And now it's time to start saying it. Not forcefully, like you're pent up, but with assertiveness, with boldness, with groundedness, with a sweet tongue, with politeness. And you'll find that you're able to, as you do this, you might find that you're able to really have your way with the world, which sounds kind of bad. But when you really learn that I can assert myself in situations, you realize how much of a say you have in how your life goes. In fact, when I used to be like a more of like a hardcore people pleaser, I would always find myself getting bullied around by circumstance. It was almost like I was creating these reflections to reinforce this disempowered way of going through life. And I find that when I start to assert myself, it's like, wow, I don't have to do that. Even when circumstance sort of shows up, I have a major, like that bug. I had a choice there. Could have swatted it. No, just kidding. Anyway, I have a major say in how I'm going to experience this. And so do you, and you always have, and you just might find yourself more compelled this week in particular to really speak your voice, to really own your truth, and to be your full self. Number 3, you might find yourself going nonlinear. Nonlinear. This is something that this channeler Cryon, I think Lee Carroll's the guy who channels Cryon, this like entity. Cryon's always talking about going nonlinear. And what he's saying is kind of like what a lot of us might find ourselves experiencing this week. Meaning, a lot of times our mind will impose structure into our life, which is extremely nonlinear. As Alan Watts would say it, he calls the world we live in wiggly. If you look into nature, there's not a lot of straight. I'm looking out into nature right now, through out my window. Not a lot of straight lines. I see leaves. It's very wiggly, very chaotic, very random. But that our mind is very linear in the way it thinks, and it tries to keep us safe and manage things by imposing all these lines. That's what Alan Watts says. He says if you look around at like the architecture, it's mostly squared up, lines, right angles, etc. Where we impose these roads and, east, west, north, south, this structure into an extremely wiggly world. And the flow of life is also quite wiggly. It's also quite nonlinear. And we've been, in a sense, successful as a human species at imposing our will into nature, but look at the consequences. We've been somewhat successful, but look at the consequences. It's a mess. The earth is just rebelling. The earth is just obviously in a very bad way. And that's kind of a big macrocosmic metaphor for what I'm trying to say here. I'm talking more so in your daily life. For example, years ago, as a personal trainer, I've shared before, I'm a personal trainer, at least I was for years. And I was always on the hunt for the perfect diet, for the perfect way of eating that makes me feel good, that makes me look good, that I enjoy the taste, that I don't have to think about, and I could just do it day after day and head off in the sunset with this perfect diet in my satchel. But what would happen? I'd find it. I'd say, oh, wow, it's paleo. Wow, it's the raw food diet. Wow, it's this. It's cutting out this. And now I'd feel great. I'd say, this is it. I'd feel amazing for like a month, maybe 2 months. And then I would get bored. I would get not only bored, but I would start to be like, where I couldn't even eat those foods anymore. I was completely sick of the diet. Not even just taste-wise. My body was saying, stop. Enough with the kale smoothies. You've had too many. You're turning green, as an example. But my mind would say, oh, no. I thought I found it. This is it. I decided 2 months ago, this is the perfect diet, and I ain't going to waver from it. And I'd find myself in this sort of pickle. And a lot of times we will do that. I'm also a creator. I'm also a YouTuber, as you know. And I'll be honest, I do these weekly energy updates, and that's become a challenge for me because my inspirations that I like to share with you guys doesn't always come on Sunday evening. And I almost didn't make one today. It just so happened I got some ideas like an hour ago. Here I am. I don't know if I'll be able to maintain these weekly updates as much as I would like to. And I know it's convenient for you. You'd say, okay, every Monday, Vic's got a new video. And I like that. I do too, trust me. But there's been a couple of times where it felt a bit forced, honestly. Where I felt a bit like, wow, I'm only doing this because I said it would. How many times have you tried to do something, were met with a lot of resistance, but you thought you had to do it, so you kept trying, and after a lot of energy and maybe even a lot of time spent, at the end of the day, it didn't come through, it didn't work out, you didn't get it done, and you're feeling frustrated and tired. And then maybe a day or two later, you wake up one day and it just happens. You don't have to plan for it. You just channel it. It happens easily, effortlessly, and in a way with a quality that you could have never in a gazillion years planned for. It just was the right time for that particular thing to be expressed out of you. It wasn't the time last Tuesday. It was the time in this moment. And that's kind of like what I'm getting at here. If this week in particular, if you can be more flexible, it's good to have schedules. All these things, the way I kind of live, it is helpful, but only to a point. Only to a point. It's important to really listen. And the clues for what's the best thing to do in this moment are always very obvious. We just get so insistent on doing things a certain way, we become oblivious to the obvious. Your body will let you know. Your body will usually tell you. The moment, what's going on in the moment, it's usually just obvious what the right move is to make in the moment. It just becomes a problem when that right move goes against what our mind has to say about it. But if you can become more nonlinear, what you'll find is you become a lot more productive. You will move through life a lot faster, like move towards your goals and dreams way faster. And you'll feel a lot more groovy, a lot better, a lot more energized, a lot more tapped in, a lot more joyful along the way. But for that to work, it requires a higher level of presence, a higher level of patience, and a higher level of trust. But who couldn't benefit from all that? So this is a week of really, again, adjusting to these internal, to these like vibrational upgrades already within us. But we can no longer act from the old foam. We have to throw it away. We have to throw away the old programming that doesn't speak their mind because they're afraid of what people will think. The old programming that will run itself into the ground because it thinks it needs to. That's old programming. It's time to upgrade ourselves, upgrade our consciousness, upgrade our behavior, upgrade our habits, upgrade everything. And if we can do that, life is going to manifest itself in a much more favorable, expansive, and accelerated way, which is sort of the direction, the ascension, if you will, is taking us. It's taking us into a life far accelerated, where things happen faster. We experience more and better type of life experience faster. But we must yield and we must adjust. And before I go, my friends, I want to share with you a tip of the week. The tip of the week is to recharge your batteries whenever needed. Earlier in my awakening, I had a lot of a very almost like debilitating fatigue. I was just tired all the time. And there are times, my friends, when there's such a biological upgrade taking place, which may be the case for some of you, where it doesn't matter what you do. You might be a little bit tired for a time, and that's okay. It does pass. But what I found looking back is a lot of my fatigue, especially the intensity of it that I would experience, was simply due to my own neglect. My own neglect to just listen to the obvious signals of my body. My body always would give me warnings that, feels like the gas tank is running on empty there, buddy. Maybe you should fill up. Okay, I know this thing's got your attention. Now you're running on fumes. You don't have much longer, Vic. Maybe, there's a gas station. You missed it. Maybe you should turn around. And then I'd find myself, what's going on? What's going on with the energies? I'm exhausted. It's like, no, you're not listening. So anyways, my friends, I say this sort of comically and dramatically, but maybe it's just me. But I used to literally live that way, and I know a lot of other people do. A lot of people, again, they don't. A lot of you guys, a lot of you empathic people, especially, have very sensitive nervous systems. You have sensitive nervous systems, which allow you to be very psychic, allow you to tap into the finer energies of reality, and to channel through brilliant artistic creations and become an amazing coach and healer and psychic. And you have all these cool powers. But that same sensitivity requires a more sensitive approach to life. It requires more being in the moment. And the nice thing is, my friends, when you do listen to your body earlier on and take a little pause, take a pit stop, it doesn't take long to recharge, to refuel. In fact, I've learned to do things that are very, very, very draining. And I've learned to do them without getting really tired, like super tired anyways. And I'll give an example. I used to run retreats in my own home. Imagine, as an empathic person, not only being responsible and holding space for like 20-something people in your house 24/7. But just me, I'm like an introverted guy. So where my wife, she can kind of become fueled from the crowd, from being around people, where I get very tired. I can like hang out and converse for a short while, and then I got to go off and take a nap or something like that. But anyway, even in that circumstance, because I've learned over the years, it's important to honor my body. I would take many naps. I would literally go upstairs. I would set a timer for 10 or 20 minutes. I'd put on the blindfold, earplugs, and I'd lay there, whether I slept or not, for either 10 or 20 minutes, and I'd get up and I'd feel better. I'd go and I'd take a cold bath, a cold plunge, or a cold shower. I'd do little quick things to reboot and to nurture my body. And when I do that, when I give my body a little love, a little more rest when needed, man, it will perform so well for me. It's imagine if you're like a horse racer and you never feed your horse, you never let it freaking sleep or anything, and you just keep powering it, versus a horse you feed organic carrots, whatever they eat, healthy food, a horse that you love and you pet once in a while and you say good job and you let sleep in a cozy area. That horse is gonna freaking deliver. It's gonna work for you. That horse is your body. For some reason, we have this very disconnected relationship with our own body. A lot of you hear the analogy of the horse and it's like, oh my God, how could you treat a horse that way? How could you neglect that poor horse? And yet, what do we do to ourselves sometimes? How could you neglect yourself? We do it, but we got to stop doing it. Not only is it like not cool to our body, but it's also just not smart either. And this is a week where there's a lot of energy, a lot of opportunity for advancement. There might be times where you're just carried away with an inspiration. Great. Save a little gas in the tank and you will go a lot further this week. By the way, my friends, as I share this, one of my programs I have that I don't oftentimes talk about, only once a year normally, it might actually be helpful for you. I'm going to share about it real quick. And if you're interested, you can check it out. It's normally not open except for at the beginning of the year. It's called Ascension Body. Ascension Body is a fitness and nutrition program for empathic people. Again, I was a personal trainer for over 10 years, also an empath, also somebody who's going through an awakening, like a lot of you. And anyways, I found that there's a way to exercise, which is kind of unconventional, and there's a way to eat, adjust your nutrition, that happens to work so well for empathic people. And once I started doing this back in 2016, I had way more energy. I lost about 25 pounds. I just looked and felt a lot better. And not only that, not only me, for years I did one-on-one coaching as well. And I would send my clients, my spiritual clients, these workout programs and this diet. I would make them do all this stuff. And what I found is this sort of unique style also worked across the board very, very well for all the empathic clients I had. So anyway, it's an at-home fitness and nutrition program called Ascension Body. I'll leave a link down below. You can check it out. It's going to be available for probably the next week or two. I'll let you know. It'll probably stay on the page there. It's normally only open during the new year, but I felt inspired to release it right now for a little while anyway. So anyway, check it out if that resonates. If not, no worries, my friends. Hopefully I will see you next week. Until next time, regardless, have an amazing day. Much love.